Hey everyone, welcome to another episode from Pro Engineering. I'm back at the house temporarily and I forgot my camera stand, so we're gonna freehand it here. So what we've got is the Hornet Evo on my desk. I've been wanting to get my hands on this thing to fix it, pretty much, if I'm honest. We'll talk about more of what I want to do a little bit later on. I did want to just show this off briefly prior to building it. This is not going to be a build video, although what I'm going to do is, well, build it. If I come across anything weird, I'll go ahead and record that portion of it. I'm sure there's going to be lots of build videos on this, and I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. One thing I do want to mention is that it does appear that the chassis is different. I can't tell if the rear has been altered, if that's just an extra bracket, but the front shock towers absolutely are different. What I'm currently trying to determine is whether or not they've modified the original tool, which I doubt they would have done because unless they have multiple, I don't believe that the Grasshopper will fit anymore with these towers. This is likely either a modification of one of the tools or a brand new tool, which given Tamiya their profits and the quantity they're going to produce likely would have made a new tool. I can't see modifying an old one. The shocks appear to be touring car shocks. We'll find out shortly. Any specifics on the box? I don't believe it comes with any electronics. Oh, no, it does. It has a Hobbywing ESC. One thing that I do want to mention is they did do the drawn box, which I think is just fab. You know, the drawn box art, which is brilliant. So a funny story, you see how it says Hornet Evo? Yeah, I called Superfly the evolution of the Hornet about a year ago. Yeah, interesting. All right, looking inside the box. Interesting, the body has been altered. You see that? So this is a considerably larger cutout. Okay, honestly, it's about what I did with Superfly, to be honest. Why do I feel like these always came pretty drilled? It's been a while. I could check. Okay, what do we got in here? So now I've built, oh, no. This is not part of the chassis. This is a reinforcement. Okay, never mind. It probably is the stock chassis now. Kind of weird opening up a Hornet box and seeing things that are not familiar to you. Okay, same battery door. They have made a modification to the battery door to prevent it from opening. I don't like it, but they've done it. This then is likely, again, without me actually opening it up, a dead stock Hornet / Grasshopper chassis. Here are probably the rear arms. Yeah, front arms. A weird texture on them. Okay, Hornet tires. How interesting. They have gone with these factory Hornet wheels. Here. I'll do a little bit more research on these parts. I'm fairly certain that these are used elsewhere. Definitely not something you associate with a Hornet. This caliber of oil shock, so, okay. Holy crap. That's a little nubbin. Not familiar with that little guy. I am familiar with these shocks, but boy, those are tiny. All right, where's the instruction manual? Oh, here it is. Why? Why have you done this? Why have you done that? That's not how the manual's supposed to go. Weird. I kind of like the little flamey look on the body. I think they look great. Cool. All right, I'm going to put this together, and it probably won't be here, so I'll jump in if I see anything weird or that I think you should, keep an eye. 40. Oh, it's the 40th anniversary. So there are two pinion settings. There's a 17 tooth, which is what it has right now, and there's also a 19 tooth option. One thing to mention as well is that the differential gears, you've got the main bevel and the spider gears. They're that old school Tamiya pot metal, which, I don't know. They look really similar to what the Blackfoot or Fast Attack would have had, and I don't know. I've never had great luck with this, but... So this is the trans control arms. This bracket bolts onto the trans, and this will go to the rear shock tower. This also bolts onto the part that bolts onto the trans. 2 screws. It bolts into where the factory, or the standard Hornet trans would have pivoted. I mean, I don't know. Can't say I'm impressed. Tamiya has done some revision work to this chassis. I don't have an actual Hornet with me right now, but it does appear that the opening for the servo is a bit smaller for the servo horn. But more importantly, Tamiya has reinforced this area. The vast majority of Tamiya Hornets that I've ever seen is cracked right here. And that's simply the result of the stress point of the shock tower and the relatively small cross section and the fact that there's really no round or bevel in this area here. So this has been dramatically increased. I'm not in love with the tower, but it's a stark improvement. You've also got these holes here. These are through holes, and that is where the brace for the underside is. That will give you the ball cup, the ball stud for the upper link for the front suspension. Then you have these little parts here, which will pop in place. And wrong side, we'll put it here. And effectively, the forces applied to the tower in the kind of the upward direction will be transmitted through this and cantilever off the bottom, which I think is a very good addition. I don't think it's a solution, but it's a massive improvement over the original. This linkage is designed to, it's incredibly ingenious, I have to admit. We'll get to how it works in a second, but what's interesting to note is that you have these two bearings that you press into this bracket. Those bearings, the screw, you're going to use a flathead screw here, and the chamfered area underneath the head actually touches off on the inside of the bearing right there. So that spins that portion of the bearing. The remainder of the bearing is restrained by the bracket. Down here, these two arms touch off on the bottom side of that bearing. And just note that even when they're fully tight, there is a little bit of play there. Okay, so I thought that this should be a little tighter, and I ended up stripping it out. So I put a little bit of glue underneath to hold it in place. So just be careful if you're going to do this. It's a very tidy assembly. I'm excited to see how it works, but it's just a little strange that they're actually using these flatheads. Please note that these MA16 ball studs, there's one there and one there. This MB6 is different. It has a little Allen. So that is a different one, and that's to connect the servo link to. So make sure you put all the correct ones in there. Ask me how I know. Very interesting. You have these aluminum spacers that you thread an M3 screw from the bottom. It's a Phillips head screw, it's a JST screw, but it's a very, very shallow head. There's quite a number of these screws in this build. I've only rarely seen that from a Tamiya product. So you have the bearings that ride on this, which is nice and tidy. Seems pretty smooth. And yeah, it looks like this entire assembly bolts to the bottom of the car, like that old triangular, or I should say 3-point spacer that used to retain the front arms. The arms are separately retained in this part, rather similar to what I did with Superfly on having a kind of a sub-assembly for the front control arms. Well, the Hornet Evo is complete. Now, elephant in the room, I don't have a tripod again. Other elephant in the room, what's wrong with it? Does it look squished? It looks squished, doesn't it? Okay, just pause, look at that, hang on. Notice how it just looks higher in the back, right? Part of it is when you're looking at the Hornet at kind of this angle here, the front end on that car is a lot wider, so maybe that kind of gives the illusion. This is definitely higher at the rear. Now, of course, you've got a completely different rear suspension setup here. It just looks strange, and I can't place it. Obviously, hang on. Okay, that's installed. Okay, this can go a bit higher. The way I've got it set up right now is the factory recommended shock oil, shock piston, and the one spacer. So you can see what I see, right? Like big gap, small gap. The chassis leans backward, whereas on the Hornet, it's pretty level, maybe a little bit more forward leaning. Again, one of these two cars can perform well. and it isn't that one. So this is a purely aesthetic thing. I don't have the body for Superfly on me right now, but you can see, right? Like the way that this thing has been designed and engineered is to mimic that vehicle's stance. This vehicle stance, okay, it doesn't work. Second thing is you've got this big thing hanging out the rear. Let me just say that I kind of like it. I like rear engine buggies. I like the look of something in the back of the car, whereas the Hornet doesn't have that at all. It's, completely flat at the rear. But it's such a departure from the intent of this vehicle that it just, I don't know. Okay, let's stop looking at the back of the car. Let's look at the front of the car. Another area that I don't like is the wheel track. First things first, wider front wheel tracks will perform better off-road. So yes, the wider front end means the car is going to be more stable. The Hornet, though, has never been a car about performance. The Hornet has a look to it, okay? That. This is not that. Look at this. No. No. So compared to your, what in the hell? No way. It's not that much wider. Hang on. Okay. Tires straight. Dude. Comparing Superfly. Okay, so that tire is spot on. So Superfly, I made about 10 millimeters wider, but you can tell once again that it's not nearly as wide. In fact, looking at it from above, the front end is still a bit narrower, not much, but it doesn't protrude like this thing does. Why? Part of my original thought was they widened the front end in order to give more vertical travel for the front tire. Now, that is true, okay? If this tire had been mounted right here, geometrically speaking, the pivot point is down there, the pivot point of the front knuckle would be right here, and as a result, there'd be less vertical travel for the front tire. So I think that they did that partly for that reason. The front suspension travel is minimal, and that's simply a result of the shock towers. Tamiya did a great job here and maintained the original look of the front towers. Yes, they have been reinforced compared to the original towers, but this is effectively the same look and feel of the front of the Tamiya Hornet, other than the front arms. Okay, one more grievance. So we're going to take the body pin out. I don't know if I've chosen the correct one. You'd figure it'd be the big loop one, but this one was by itself and bigger, so I kind of assume that. Okay, so this little clip, fine, not all that elegant, gets the job done. Okay, now we're going to remove the battery door. Okay, wait, now watch this. Lift. Okay, slide back. Dude, this was re-engineered. This is a custom part. Why not sink it down a bit more and make it work without getting stuck? Yes, you can get it out. You grab the door here, you lift it and pry it up and over. But what's the benefit? And then to reinstall it, okay, that goes like this. You've got to push it down. We're doing it one-handed. It's not nearly this bad. Okay, so you got to push it down, lift this up a bit to get it over the little tab. I've screwed that up. Okay, there we go. All right, and that you lift up, slide over. Okay. It works. It's gonna work fine. Just weird. Comparing this to the Ampro battery design door, very simple. You lift this tab, okay? Pull back. There it goes. Again, you drop it down. This is intended to flex. Note the relief right there. Slide it down and it pops in. You put your body pin there. Okay, things that I like. The front steering on this vehicle, magical. Brilliant design. I did something very, very similar. You can see the bell crank system that I did right there. Works beautiful. I think it has even more ball bearings than the Tamiya one. I couldn't do what they did because I still maintained the original design language of the Tamiya front suspension. So I was, that area is occupied. Could I have jammed something up in here? Probably. Didn't think about it. Brilliant idea. The downside with my front end is that it's a smaller than average servo. They're still dirt cheap, but it's just not a common servo to wedge it in there because I wanted to maintain the standard Ampro cage with a very similar Tamiya chassis down here. Steering design, fantastic. Looks great. Beautifully engineered. Works very well. So steering, it's good. Pretty symmetric. The Hornet used to be pretty bad in the past. This actually looks good. Okay, bump steer, minimal. Yeah, there's some. Not important. Not important for a car like this. At the rear, I think there's a little bit of camber gain. I think more than acceptable. In fact, I think quite good. The car feels smooth. Everything feels nice and solid on the car. There have been improvements to the chassis. You know, as I mentioned before, this region here, which is extremely weak, has been updated. We'll compare that to the original. Actually, this is good. So this is an original chassis. Note the white. Those are stress marks. Okay, heck, look at the deflection right there. So this is something that the Ampro cage eliminates. However, Tamiya did modify this, and that is beautiful to see. There are some other alterations. For example, this didn't exist on the original. I don't think this changed now. This slot here used to go all the way across right here. Okay, that was for the Tamiya hump pack. I believe that alteration was done more recently. I did create a bracket for the power switch that comes with the ESC. I've posted this on Instagram, and I've already gotten a ton of people say, well, just cut the switch off and solder on another one. Well, that would require you to locate another switch, cut it off, solder it on. This was a 15-minute print, and it works perfectly. So your problem solved. And at the bottom, you've got your switch in the correct location. Please ignore the wing mount. That is a upcoming Ampro product for this vehicle. We've got actually a number of things coming for this car. The rear suspension. Okay, the area of contention. I want to start by saying, if I had been tasked by Tamiya to create this vehicle, they are constrained by significantly more than Superfly was, okay? That was a 3D printed product. This needs to turn a profit. And while bespoke parts on this vehicle would have eventually turned a profit, the initial cost to get the project going would have been massively higher. In this case here, the entire gearbox, I believe DTO 2, I think, off-the-shelf part, tree was done, gears were done, ready to go, bolted on, big old hole in the middle that's ugly as sin, but it works. I've driven this a bit, runs nice, runs very nice. It's slow, and that's not something I would normally say with a Silver Can Hornet. The Hornet's usually pretty sprightly. This feels sluggish, and I believe it has to do with the overall gearing of this vehicle. The shock choice, again, had they gotten taller shocks, I don't know that that would have improved anything. You know, you've got relatively tiny tires, so increased travel would still have just resulted in the car grounding out on the bottom. I feel that the weight bias on this vehicle is really, I mean, grabbing it from the middle, it's just all the way to the back of the car. What is this? Oh, great. I haven't screwed that down. All the weight on this car is at the back. It's really rear heavy. So what are my thoughts? There's a lot of hate. I hate the front wheel track. I hate that the rear sags so much, but I think that, I think it needs stiffer springs, if you ask me. I don't think this would be enough spacers. Oh, I hate this. Oh boy. What is happening here? No, I didn't mess, well, I did mess it up a little bit. Some of this right here on the flat is supposed to stay there. But the rear cut and all this cut is how it's supposed to be. What is happening? Again, they had to, whatever engineer was in charge of this project was not happy about this. I guarantee it. Their hands were tied. This was the gearbox that they had selected. There was just no alternative. I hate it. It's terrible, but they had no choice. The good news is, In the press photos of this vehicle, no one's really noticed it. And that's because the minute you get the wing on there, you know, it's gone, right? You really don't see it. So again, in terms of grievances, this car is massively better than I would have anticipated. The front end is going to be very capable. The rear suspension is going to be great. Just the overall off-road performance of this car is going to be, well, normal, I guess. And that kind of takes me back to Superfly. You know, I've been working on this project for many years now. The weird thing about Superfly is while it looks more like a Hornet than this does, it doesn't behave like one. It's kind of a normal buggy. And part of the Hornet's allure was how crappy it was. Well, this isn't crappy. It's good. Okay, I've been talking for about 3 years now. Let's drive it. Thanks. Okay, this is gonna be full speed now. I mean, it's more than controllable, even though I'm doing this with one hand. Oh God, sorry guys. Honestly, like, this is how I'm doing this. That is a poor sound. The steering rate's maxed out, by the way. Oh God. Weird throttle response in this. Really weird throttle response. FYI, Jacob, you're in a video now. You had to sign a form. Sign a form.
Oh, good.
We'll be right there. Awesome. Hello. I drove it on the track because we happened to be at the track, and this is not an off-road. This is not a modern RC car track vehicle. If your hobby shop has an outdoor dirt track that isn't clay, oh man, I bet you this thing is going to shred out there. It's probably going to tear the frog to bits as well, if you've got to, just kind of by comparison. You do have to be careful on the jumps because it perpetually wants the back of the car to spiral directly out of control. But it's a decent entry-level buggy. If I had to choose between this and maybe like a DTO2 full car, I'd go with this only because I like the overall appearance of the vehicle, and I guarantee you there's be a lot of aftermarket parts for this car to alter its performance and make it more, make it better. I'm pleasantly surprised with this vehicle. I was intending to rip it to shreds, and no, I like it. I mean, that's better, but this car is what Tamiya had to do to create their vision of the vehicle based on a minimum order quantity, projected sales, and profit. So yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. And yes, I'll fix it. I promise. We'll see you soon.